The Miniature Railway Adventures. The Search of the Lost Engine. Written and read by Whitehouse Films. Forward. Dear friends, since these stories were first told to you, many people have been believing that our first adventure together was balmy and crazy. But what if I was to tell you that version of the story never happened? True, Betty the Bagnal engine was stolen, but it was for a different purpose than a silly ray gun. Continue listening to understand what really happened in our search for the lost engine. The author. Chapter 1. The winter winds were slowly starting to ease as the springtime drew nearer. The first of the snowdrops had begun to emerge from their roots in the ground and were slowly forming their path to blooming. The urge to do some cleaning was among the thoughts of the members of the Model Engineer Society, and each day when they arrived, a task was set for them to make some improvements of their club. The four boys, Casey, Cars, Corpse and Whitehouse, were busy sorting out the engine sheds and workshops and disposing any unwanted junk that cluttered up needed space. Jane, the tea girl, spent some time improving the clubroom as it was showing signs of wear. The old kitchen area had been replaced with new cupboards and allowed more space to be made. Jane had just finished hoovering the new carpet when she decided to do some dusting around the shelves, which held a number of engineer magazines. A stack of these peeked over the edge of the top shelf. Jane stood on a stool and tried to reach for the stack. She nearly had her first finger set on them when she lost her balance and landed on the sofa. The magazines followed and scattered around the room. Jane sighed and started to stack them neatly for storage. Then she noticed something from the corner of her eye. A photograph had fallen out of one of the magazines and had fluttered under the table. Jane picked it up and looked at it. It was dated September 2008, and it was of four kids standing next to Betty. One wore an 80s style black jacket, while the other wore a grey hoodie. The other two were in club uniforms, with one of them wearing a driver's cap, which looked like it was 2 sizes too big and went down over his ears. "Well, I'll be," Jane said with surprise. "Wait till they see this." She tucked the photo into her pocket and went back to work, smiling to herself. 4:45, closing time. The four boys had done good for their day's work. The workshops and sheds were now prepared for anything that awaited them when the springtime rolled in. "A job well done is what I say," Cars declared as he poured out the teas. "A tidy and well-organised railway is a reliable and functional one." Everyone agreed to this. Then Jane remembered and took the photograph out of her pocket. "Look what I found while cleaning the clubroom," she said. The others looked at the photo that Jane presented to them. A wave of memories came back to them. My, exclaimed Corpse. "It's us!" "This must have been taken at the time you joined Whitehouse," chuckled Casey. "Back when we went on the search of the lost engine." "I've heard about that," said Jane. "You all went on a search and stopped cars from destroying all the railways and replaced them with roads, right?" Upon hearing this, the four boys fell about laughing. Jane looked on confused. Oh, yes," Whitehouse said, wiping a tear from his eye. "That was the tale, all right. And what a tale that was, wasn't it?" They all laughed again. "Are you saying you never went to some fortress and fought to the death with each other?" Jane asked, rather puzzled. "Sorry, we never did," answered Cars. "We made that story up to entertain the young members." But why did you—" "Well, we don't often like to talk about it much," Corpse explained once he recovered. "Back then, things were a lot different than what they are now." "Such as?" "Well, for a start, we were enemies," Cars informed. "We were friends once, then enemies, as you mentioned, and then we became friends again." "It's strange how it all floods back to you," murmured Whitehouse. "So, what did happen all those years ago?" Jane asked. "I'm very interested to know the truth." The four boys looked at each other, and after a while, nodded in agreement. "Okay, but I want you to promise not to tell anyone else," Carr said sternly. "Very few people know about it, and they too have been asked to keep it all quiet." "But why?" "It wasn't a good time for the railway," Casey began. "Some of our best and dedicated members have passed on, and very few joined. Whitehouse was among those who joined after I told him I was a member." "I was a little too enthusiastic," Whitehouse added, a wee bit embarrassed. There was always a time where I wanted to drive an engine, but that opportunity never arose. Casey would often let me drive Betty after a day's run, but no more than that. Now, go steady and don't go too fast. Casey watched on as Whitehouse released the brake. Betty moved, but in the wrong direction, and bumped the buffer stop by the workshops. Careful! You've got her in reverse! Look, push that lever there, forward. Shut the regulator off first! Oh, dear me. Casey was doing his best to help Whitehouse learn the basics on driving steam trains, but he wasn't that good with the controls. He knew the forward and reverse lever all right, the regulator, the brake, but he got confused on which was the water feed tap, the blower, and the bypass. Look, I think you better let me do the driving for now. I can manage, insisted Whitehouse. I've got the hang of it now. Betty wished steam from her drain cocks, but stayed where she was. Try taking the brake off, Casey said helpfully. Whitehouse sighed as he did so. Practice makes perfect, as they say, Casey added, hoping to cheer his friend up a little. Whitehouse didn't say anything as he made his way up towards the sheds. After collecting a line of coaches, they made their way to the station where they found Whitehouse's cousin, Rory Clements, and friend, Mark Carson. I've heard those names before, said Jane. Who are they? Oh, those are me and Cars's names, Corpse said. We gave ourselves nicknames in the past, and we still use them today. I'm called Corpse because of the collection of toy soldiers I had when I was young, and for Cars, well, we just shortened his surname. Well, that answers a lot of questions, chuckled Jane. She looked over at Casey and Whitehouse. I take it that you two did the same then? Well, we did, actually, Casey smiled. My real name's Christopher Jones Jr. Casey's just my nickname. And my real name's Mike Whitehouse. But I just did the same as Cars, said Whitehouse. We like our nicknames better, in all fairness. It sort of gives us a bit of character. Sounds simple enough to understand, agreed Jane. Sorry, I stopped you there. What happened next? Casey thought for a second. Let's see. Yes, we were just coming to the station with the train as usual. Corpse and Cars were waiting for us on the platform. The two boys watched as Betty rolled in. Whitehouse went to gather his guard tools out of the ticket office. How's life on the railways, then? Asked Corpse. Same old, same old. Been giving Sterling Moss here another driving lesson. Any improvements? Casey smirked. Oh, take that as a no, then. Still, practice makes perfect. That's what I've been saying to him. But to be fair, he does have good driving skills with battery engines. If we can get him working on one of those, he'd be fine. What's that you're talking about me? Called Whitehouse from the office. I'm doing fine with my driving if that's what you're talking about. So long as you understand the controls correctly, Casey called. He lowered his voice. I swear, if he gets water in the smoke box again, he'll be the one to clean it out. They all chuckled quietly so Whitehouse didn't hear. So how's things with you two? I hear you're looking for work now, right? I've got my business plan worked out already, Corpse stated proudly. After succeeding in my mechanics course, I'm saying about starting up a business of making custom machines. The market for it isn't quite strong, but in time it would. You'll see. Yes, I'm sure it would. Casey and Cars exchanged looks. Well, what about you, Cars? Found any opportunities of employment yet? Not since I checked half an hour ago, Cars said sadly. Where was it you worked again? Asked Corpse. That small garage outside the town. Hughes' Tech Mix. Ah, now that was a lovely place, said Casey. Shame it had to close, though. Why did it close, anyway? Asked Corpse. Cutbacks and failure to pay off the new landlord. I'd never seen him, but I've been told he's a right git. Who's a git? Asked Whitehouse, who overheard the conversation. That new landlord who closed down that garage Cars used to work for. Oh, yes, I've heard about that. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that, mate. It's all right. Cars sighed again. Place was falling to bits anyway. What's this bloke's name? Asked Corpse. Maybe we may have heard of him. Cars thought back carefully. Williams, I think his name was. I don't know his first name. Williams? I don't know any Williams. Do you? Asked Corpse. I do know of one Williams, but I don't know if it's him, said Casey. Well, whoever this Williams is, he'll get the fork end of my tongue. You wait and see, said Whitehouse. No friend of mine's going to be made jobless. Cars then checked his watch. Yes, well, we better head off here, otherwise we'll miss our train. Anyway, it was good seeing you guys again. Why not sign up with us, Cars, here on the railway? We're short of staff at the moment. Thanks, Whitehouse here, but I'll have a look and see if anything has come up at the job centre first. Thanks all the same, though. With that, Cars and Corpse made their way up the road to the station at the top of the hill. Williams. Could it be the same Williams he knew? Casey wasn't sure, but the name rolled around his brain as he and Whitehouse went back to work. No more was said about that throughout their day's work. On their way up to the station, Corpse and Cars noticed a wire mesh gate in the hedge. It had a sign on it. "Workers needed," it said in large letters. The lettering was still dripping, as though it had just been applied. "Sheesh, whoever these people are looking employment, they could use some proper paint for their signs," commented Corpse. "It's quite runny for paint, isn't it?" Cars walked up and dabbed his finger into a blob that had formed below. He rubbed it with his thumb and forefinger and examined it carefully. "It's oil," he said at last. "They painted their sign with oil. Now why would they use that?" "For oil painting?" joked Corpse. Cars looked at Corpse and gave a sigh with a hint of a laugh in it. He was full of them today, wasn't he? Looking beyond the board, Cars could just make out a series of sheds and a towered building. There was no signs of life on the outside, but lots of banging and shouting came from the inside of the sheds. There came another bang, followed, without haste, a cloud of black smoke. 2 boys emerged from one of the sheds, coughing and spluttering as they put their caps out, which were still smouldering rapidly. "They look as if they'd never had any mechanical experience ever," chuckled Cars. "Huh, you wouldn't catch me working for those lot," added Corpse. "Look at that place. It's nearly fallen to bits." "Whoever they are, I say good luck to them if they're ever going to get through their business. Come on, our train will be here soon," said Cars. And that was our first encounter with the MCS. Jane was impressed, but this didn't relate as to what that had to do with Betty getting stolen. There's still more to be told," Whitehouse said. He looked out of the window. It's getting dark now, and we better close up for the day. Listen, how about all you lot come over and stay at my place till morning? We can continue the story over dinner." "Sounds good to me," agreed Casey, and he headed out to lock up the workshops. Chapter 2. The group got together in the comfort of Whitehouse's home over a well-received dinner. The topic of the lost engine story had been circling Jane's mind since the truth was told to her, and she was interested on hearing what more was to be told. She waited until it was the right time to talk about it. While Cars went to make everyone tea, Whitehouse came down the stairs carrying a box of photographs. He placed each one on the coffee table, pausing to remember where each one was taken from. Let's see, that one was taken, I think, a week after I joined the society. This one looks good, Casey commented, picking up a photo out of the pile. I remember you got water in the smoke box by accident, some hours after this was taken. Jeez, are you still going to bring up that incident up? Whitehouse commented, rather embarrassed. Like I said earlier, I didn't know what controls did which. Anyway, that was in the past now, so can we please drop that memory from our minds, please? What's this one? Jane held a strange photograph up. It looked like an old chopper bike, or something. Corpse took the photo and looked at it carefully. Then he chuckled. Well, I'll tell you about that one later on, he said, and he tucked the photograph into his pocket. Now here's one I remember. This is the garage that Cars worked for. Yeah, I took that on the day it was being knocked down. Shame, really. It was such a nice place, too, sighed Cars. Then, that's when I first met him. Who? Asked Jane. Click! Just after the camera clicked, the crane swung the ball. In an instant, the building was nothing but splintered wood and rubble. Carr stood some yards away watching it all happen. He loved working in this little garage and hoped to run it himself. Now, that dream was literally shattered. Mr. Hughes, the retired owner, left early that morning to stay with his sister, but informed Cars that he was to be transferred to a new company that was looking employment. While he thought about who this employer was, Cars failed to notice a Rolls-Royce pull up next to him and the passenger stepping out. The man stepped quietly next to Cars and waited for himself to be introduced. Cars didn't look at him. His mind was still focused on his current thought. It was only when the man coughed that he looked round. To his eyes, the man was nothing much in height as he was in width. He bore a similar appearance to the actor Danny DeVito, but his appearance wouldn't have been suitable for any movie picture. There was something about his eyes that made Cars think. They were sinister-looking eyes, which could stare down at you and make you do anything he wishes you to do. The man tipped his hat politely to Cars and introduced himself. "My name is Bernard Williams, your new employer. You're Mr. Carson, I take it?" Yes, that's me," Cars replied, eyeing the man carefully. So this was the new landlord. "Good. You will join me on your way to your new workplace. I hope you're as good as mechanics than those two nitwits I took on yesterday." "Well, we'll find out then, won't we?" Cars was quite surprised. No business questions about past experience or qualifications? How can he be sure that this man has any experience with running a business? But he had no time to think about this, as he was hurried into the car and driven to his new workplace. The car stank of an unknown scent as Bernard lit up a fresh cigar after finishing his last one. He must have been a 40-a-day bloke, for the inside of the car had many discarded ends of cigars. All the windows were up, except the driver's, who was safely protected from the fumes. Cars held his breath. The smell was unbearable. What was in those cigars? Trying to show a bit of hospitality to his new employee, Bernard offered Cars a cigar. "My own brand," he advertised. "Had them specially made to keep the noggin on the go. Try one." Cars shook his head and raised his hand politely. He was sure that whatever was in those cigars, it would have made marijuana smell more like an air freshener. "Non-smoker, eh? Well, you're lost." Cars decided to take his mind off the smell and to see where it was that they were going. The route seemed familiar, as if though he had been on it before. Sure enough, they were heading to the railway club. Or should that be outside it? The car turned towards the hedge and up to the old gate. Cars looked out as to where he was, but a black mist fogged over his eyesight. He waved his hand about, thinking it was more of Bernard's cigar smoke, but it wasn't. It was his eyesight that was fogging over. He was blacking out. How long was he holding his breath? 15 minutes? Not surprising he didn't black out earlier. A burst of cold air brought Cars round as the door was swung open by the driver. Coughing and spluttering, he emerged from the car and waited till his vision was back to normal. "Well, here we are," Bernard said proudly. "Your new workplace. Come on inside and we'll get you started." Once vision was restored, Cars could see that his workplace was those buildings that he and Corpse saw before. He looked around to take in what was going to be his new place of employment for God knows how long. He followed Bernard into the sheds where some of the workers were fiddling with an old car. "As you can see," Bernard explained, "some of our workers know what they're doing. That is, once they've located the problem." "Try it now, Bert," called a worker from under the bonnet. His friend tried to start the engine, but nothing but a spluttering sound was heard, and clumps of smoke popped out of the engine. "Gah, wretched thing," said the worker, scratching his head. "They've been working on that model for some years now, and still haven't got it working," Bernard explained. Cars looked at the vehicle carefully and studied its make. "Do you mind if I try something?" he asked. "Well, Bernard began. "Shan't take more than a few seconds." And with that, Cars walked over, looked at the engine, then removed a few bits around. The workers watched on in admiration. After sorting out under the bonnet, Cars then grabbed a long screwdriver and went round to the back of the car. After a short second, he stepped back and nodded to the worker. "Try it now," he said. Unsurely, the worker climbed in and switched on the ignition. The car started. Cheering ran out throughout the building, and the workers came up and shook Cars' hand. "How in God's name did you know what was wrong with it?" asked the worker. "Simple," Cars replied, smiling. "He didn't thoroughly clean the plugs, and there was a blockage in the exhaust. A bird's nest of all things." Just then, two young boys walked in from the other shed. "What's all the commotion in here?" the tall one asked. "We're trying to repair a van here," the other one said. "Boys,
I'd like you to meet our new employee, Mark Carson. What you just heard was his spectacular achievement at getting old Rusty up and running again. Mark, come and meet my, trainee mechanics, Grinder and Gears."
"Those are your names?" asked Cars.
"Our parents were in the mechanic trade," explained Gears, "and thought naming their children after mechanical items was good for a laugh."
"I don't know why they call me Grinder. I don't even sound like one," Grinder said, in his grinding sort of voice.
"I'm sure with your past experience you should be able to help these two gain some skills that would help us out," said Bernard. "Now, first of all, let's get your uniform sorted out." And he escorted Cars to get himself measured into his uniform.
Meanwhile, up at the railway club, Whitehouse was slowly starting to improve his driving with Betty. But Casey had something on his mind. The name Cars told him was still running around in his head, and he wanted to find out more about him. He heard about this Williams from an older member, and was warned to stand his ground whenever he came across anyone who matched his description. "Casey! Oi! F calling Casey Jr. Huh? Sorry, what? Did you not see that smooth running I was doing just now?" Sorry, my mind was elsewhere." Casey scratched his head thoroughly. Anyway, show me that again." "It's too late now. I've already coupled up to the coaches, ready to move off." "Oh, right. Okay then. Let's head off then." Whitehouse could tell that something was troubling his friend. He seemed to be in a daydream and didn't concentrate on what he was doing. They arrived at the platform where a few passengers were waiting for them. Casey was still thinking and didn't realize that he'd overshot the platform. The guard's whistle brought him round again. "What are you playing at?" called Whitehouse from the guard's van. "We're meant to stop at the station, not glide past it. And here's me thinking I was the one who needed driving lessons." Blushing with embarrassment, Casey backed the train to the platform and began filling the water tank. "What's gotten into you lately?" asked Whitehouse. "Every time we're working, you're always getting your head lost in the clouds." "It's just this name of that landlord that closed Cars' workplace." "What, Williams? Yeah, that's the one." "Case, there are lots of people with the surname Williams." "Yeah, I know that there, but I'm just having sort of, doubts about it." "Well, can you try and keep focus on your work, please? We're trying to run a railway here, not a therapy clinic." Whitehouse gave out the safety procedures to the passengers and signalled the train out. As the train steamed away, a pair of glaring eyes watched on through a pair of binoculars in an office window. "Mr. Williams?" Bernard turned away from the window.
"Ah, Mark, good to see you. How are you finding your new uniform?"
It wasn't the best of uniforms, being a few sizes too small, but Cars did his best to overlook the circumstances. It's fine, sir," he said, ruffling his collar a little.
"Good. Now, I asked you up here to offer you a new role in the company sector. I am ranking you up to second in command. How do you like that, then?"
"Well,
Yes, I know. Even I would be speechless to be given such an offer. Why, my great-grandfather went static for 3 weeks when they offered him a job as a janitor for the local football team. It was only then we found out that he died from a stroke during the interview, and remained immobile until somebody asked him where the toilets were. He still works for them now, as a hat stand, I believe. Anyway, but that's not going to happen to you, my friend, for you have a great skill."
"Why, thank you, Mr. Williams."
There'll be no more of that Mr. Williams stuff, Mark. Please, call me Bernard."
"Okay, Bernard. And if you don't mind me asking, could you call me Cars from now on? It's a nickname that I've grown fond to, that some friends gave me."
"Very well then, Cars. Now, to business."
Bernard offered Cars a chair and sat opposite him at the desk. He fired up another cigar, his 25th that day, and brought out some documents and reference photographs.
"For the last 30-odd years, my company profits have plummeted to rock bottom, and the lack of customers are showing signs that this company has little left to go by. It is with luck that I persuaded the directors of the Model Transport Committee to combine it as both a club and a business. I had plans to construct a factory for the business to expand, but, alas, there was a problem."
What kind of problem was that then, exactly?" asked Cars.
"It was in the mid-1970s. I had located a stretch of land not far from here, which would be perfect to expand the company, but buying it was the problem. Somehow, the landowners kept changing the price of the land, and I could not meet the price. When a final price was made, I pushed the business to its limit, till we earned enough money for the land. But when I went to buy it, I found I was too late. The land had already been sold to a model engineers club, and soon a railway was built on top of it.
A railway?
Cars interrupted. Yes, ran by a bunch of sick-minded folk who do all they can to be the best that there is. At first, it wasn't a problem, but over time I found that the growing popularity of that little railway has been taunting me for years on end, and pretty soon all our customers started to drop like flies. My workers lost all interest in the business, and even what you perfected earlier was an example of their lack of enthusiasm.
As Bernard continued talking, Cars was having trouble taking this all in. Had his friends been working for a job-stealing railway all this time and never told him about it? Could they also be responsible for his last workplace to go bust? A strange feeling erupted inside of him that he never felt before. It was anger, hatred, and anger. His slight interest in railways were wiped out in an instant. Fond memories of his friends were burnt away in a fiery furnace in his inner thoughts. He disliked railways. No, that would be too kind. He hated railways. He wanted to see locomotives being dragged away to the weed-infested sidings and painfully dismantled bit by bit by the forever blue glow of the gaslit torch. Now he dreamed to witness the day when the resurrection of the Beechin's axe was to come, to cut down the lines which took away the much-needed customers to the car industries, and to drag its twisted, splintered remains to a forever forgotten grave. He hated railways.
And so, as you can see, that even though they're currently hanging by a thread, they're still making more business than us. Now, the plan is to see about outdoing them the same way as they done to us. Any suggestions?
Cars remained silent. He was letting this new feeling finish what it had started, and to let him continue functioning once more. After a few seconds, he stood up, lit up one of Bernard's cigars, and breathed in the toxic fumes with pleasure.
"I'll have it on your desk in the morning, sir," he said coldly, and stepped out of the office.
As the door closed, Bernard smiled wickedly. His plan was working. The others were very quiet as Cars finished. Casey and Corpse's clothes were wringing with sweat after what they just heard, and they were quivering slightly. Was Bernard telling the truth about the railway? Asked Jane.
Well, back then it did, but it turned out he was a bit of a sore loser and liked to give multiple views on how he lost the land.
Well, I must say, Cars, you were very descriptive when you were talking about how much you hated the railways, White have said as he cleared away the photographs. Cars blushed and chuckled.
Well, yeah, I think my inner thoughts got a little carried away on that subject.
I'm still shocked you smoked one of Bernard's cigars, Casey said. What were they like, actually? Foul, I would imagine. Have you ever socked toxic waste through a flannel? Asked Cars with a smile.
They all shook their heads. Well, those cigars were far worse than that.
He yawned as he looked at the clock. Ugh, cripes! It's gone after midnight. We've got to be at the club, Raniet. Aw, can't I hear the rest of the story? Asked Jane disappointingly.
That's enough stories for now, chuckled Cars. Besides, he went on, looking over at Case and Corpse, who was still quivering, I think these two will need to settle down a bit before any more scary additions will need to be told.
Jane agreed and began helping Whitehouse to bring the sleeping bags down to the living room. 2:45 a.m. Jane lay on top of the sofa staring up at the ceiling. What Cars had told her and the others that evening kept her thinking. What if Bernard was like that to all his workers, lying to them about how evil the railway is and getting grinder and gears to try and close it down? It just didn't seem right. Cars, she whispered so as not to wake the others. Cars, are you awake?
Huh?
Cars grunted. He was now. Listen, I can't stop thinking about what Bernard told you all those years ago. Did he really mean what he meant?
Just don't worry about it, Jay. It's so in the past,
yawned Cars. And with that, he nodded back to sleep. Jane stared back at the ceiling once more. This once random tale to entertain young members was starting to become more serious than she thought. And what did cars mean about more scary features? She will have to wait patiently till the truth can be revealed, and then she would find out.